the law was declared unconstitutional or illegal.
10 years for possession, 20-year minimum mandatory to life for sales or giving away. I gave 2 joints to an undercover policewoman at the end of 1966. And so for 2.5 years before trial, I challenged the constitutionality of the law in the courts while I was out on bail. And for 2.5 years, they threatened to take me to trial on the charge of furnishing, what they call it. I gave it away anyway. It was same as sales, with the 20-year minimum, mandatory minimum. See, the narcotics laws were so severe that you couldn't even fight them. You couldn't dare go to trial on a charge of sales, because if you lost, you got 20 years minimum in prison. So I was actually busted 3 times before I found on the 3rd attempt the lawyers that would represent my point of view that this law was unconstitutional and wrong. When I started with my criminal career with the law in 1964, you couldn't even talk to a lawyer about defending you on a drug charge. That was scum. You know, you can only get the kind of scum lawyers that hang around the courthouse. I had one of those. And then you had to plead guilty and get probation or time. So I got probation once, I got 6 months time the second time. So the 3rd time I was arrested. I was also an activist, as he said, so I was a cultural activist, and then I was in Detroit I was a cultural activist, but cultural activism was also political activism because the culture was so moribund that anything you did to challenge the status quo was regarded as a political act. Like William Burroughs said, you know, the government always realized that the beatniks were a greater threat to America than the Communist Party. I was a beatnik. So, after I was arrested the first time in January of '65, I received word from New York City that Allen Ginsberg and Ed Sanders, 2 of my mentors and friends, had started an organization called LEMAR, Legalized Marijuana. And they were going to have the first anti-marijuana law rally, which you've probably seen the famous picture of Ginsberg with the top hat, and hot as fun. That was January '65, that was the first rally. So I said, geez, what a great idea, we ought to do this in Detroit. So I started LEMAR of Detroit. So I was an activist against the laws at the same time, of course, I was blatantly violating the laws. Always a bad combination. So I was subjected to the brunt of the punishment. So after 2.5 years of trying to challenge the constitutionality of the law before trial, without having to go to trial, just on the idea of it, they said, no, you have to come with a conviction and appeal the conviction, and then we will rule on it. So I went back to get the conviction. And then at that time, that's when they denied an appeal bond. Well, I never bargained on that. That was never part of the deal, you know. Only murderers and mass arson, whatever, would not be a law bond. So that was a complete surprise to me, and I ended up doing 2.5 years in prison.
They made an example out of you.
And big time. I was the example.
Unfortunate.
No. On the other hand, I insisted. I wasn't a victim. I was the agitator. I was against them. I opposed them. So it wasn't like they picked out some poor guy like they do now, you know.
Yeah, but it's not illegal to try to change the law.
Pardon?
It's not illegal to try and change the law.
Well, I don't know, maybe not in Greece.
continue with that.
She's fleeing. But this thing gets to the part where I got deported from Canada. No, she's Canadian.
Yeah.
She didn't want to hear it. Never gone back since either. What are you saying, Joe?
Well,
Is it a different camera?
yeah, let's do them.
Wow, double multimedia.
Yeah, always have two cameras.
Zero.
When I was at the University of Michigan, at the Butler Library, looking at your files, the tremendous, the archive of legal papers and legal correspondence. John wrote every day in prison, and
7 pages, single space.
yeah, and you know, so it's
And
like with
nothing else.
Alan and Abby Hoffman and all the different names of the people that were so important to the 60s, at least from my framework, are involved in that case, or were supportive of that case.
It helped me.
And eventually they, because it was going nowhere, the judge, why don't you talk about the judge?
Allen Ginsberg, as a matter of fact, in that effort, succeeded in having me labeled as a political prisoner by the International Writers Organization called PEN. That was pretty exciting, to be a political prisoner in America. They didn't have any of those, so to speak, you know. But those people worked very hard on my behalf. Abby Hoffman got hit on the head by a guitar at Woodstock for mentioning my case, you know.
And what about the concert, the significance of the Chrysler Arena concert?
Well, for 5 years, from when I was arrested on this case in January of '67 until my conviction was reversed in March of '72, we carried on a public battle basically centered on legalization of marijuana and specifically on my case. I felt the only chance I had of exoneration or eventual victory was by winning over the public opinion, not so much of the squares, but if you got all the people that smoked weed and all the people that liked rock and roll, that if you got them to support my case, it would be a significant show of support. So I was a member of an organization, started out as a collective of hippie bands and groups, and evolved into the White Panther Party. And we were agitators and organizers, and we had a rock and roll band called the MC5 that developed a fairly large and very enthusiastic following in Michigan and throughout the Midwest generally, and eventually ended up with an album on Elektra Records. Well, during all this time, and I was also active as a cultural organizer doing free concerts. We pioneered the idea of benefits with bands playing to raise money for people that had drug charges and draft resistance and what have you. So we put this behind the effort to legalize marijuana, and we would have rallies, benefits, and also the money we would raise we would give to our legal team to carry on this fight. Substantial cost. So after I was in prison, these things intensified, and I would dare say, if you looked in that archive, you would find there was probably one sort of benefit or another every week for about 2.5 years, from a place in a size this big to a free concert of thousands to the it culminated in this. We organized a concert in December of 1971. I'd been there 2.5 years. And the Michigan legislature had a marijuana bill, a drug bill, to reform the drug laws. And we had helped develop this bill. And part of its extent was to remove marijuana from the narcotics laws and call it a controlled substance and substantially reduce the penalties to 4 years for sale, 90 days for possession. So we helped get this bill through. But the year before, the bill had gone all the way to the end of the term, and then they recessed without voting on it. So we wanted to do something to put the focus on this bill and to make them vote, at least to say no. Because I'd just done another year in prison without even saying no, you know what I'm saying? So we wanted to force a vote on this, and hopefully a positive vote. So we organized this concert. We had a friend who worked for the University of Michigan, Peter Andrews. He had been hired by he was a friend of mine who was a fellow manager of rock and roll bands and promoter and what have you, a very close friend of mine. And he got this job with the university once they decided that it was all right to exploit rock and roll as a moneymaker. Because when I was in Ann Arbor, when I first went to Ann Arbor in '68, you couldn't get the university to rent a facility for a rock and roll dance by the MC5, for example, or the Stooges, without suing them. We used to have to sue them each time we wanted to do at the Union Ballroom, 800 capacity, you know. So they were dead set against this. But finally they saw that, like the rest of American business, that rock and roll was going to be not a cultural force, but a big business. So they embraced this. So they hired Peter.
This is mine.
Yeah, it's yours, bro.
Yeah. But fucking
You're
things.
supposed to have that off in an interview, bro.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, reminds me.
Okay. This is what I guess I do is. There we go.
So anyway, I'm saying all this to say that Peter Andrews was in a position to arrange for our use of the major facility on the campus. The basketball arena held 14,400 people. And we contacted everybody we knew in the movement and in the rock and roll world to get people to play on this benefit and to be part of this movement, because we thought if we made a big thing with 15,000 people, that they couldn't ignore the legislation and that they would have to deal with it. So as it turned out, we were right. And well, as it turned out, our friend Jerry Rubin had become friends with John Lennon in Yoko Ono when I moved to New York City. And he told them about my case. And he said, I'm going out there on December 10th to be on this rally for Sinclair. Why don't you guys come? And so they decided to come. So once it became public knowledge that John Lennon and Yoko Ono would be coming to Ann Arbor to play on my behalf, everything turned upside down. The legislature passed the bill. The next night we had the concert. On Monday I was released from prison on bond. So it was a beautiful thing.
What a man can do.
Yeah. So that's when I got out. And 3 months later, they voted on my case in this Michigan Supreme Court, and they overturned the marijuana law. the next thing we did was in Ann Arbor. I was based in Ann Arbor by that time. We moved from Detroit to Ann Arbor in '68. And while I was in prison, also my partner in the White Panther Party, Poynton, he was in prison. And we just read a lot of books. And we studied V.I. Lenin, Marx and Engels, Mao Zedong, Franz Fanon, Kwame Nkrumah. We read every fucking revolutionary book that there was. And so we thought, Jesus, we're just bumbling around like a bunch of hippies. We got to organize and do this shit with some kind of direction and purpose, you know. Plus we had basically volunteered ourselves to the Black Panther Party. We wanted to help them, serve them. And they said, you have to study this. That's why we started studying. They said, you have to study this political theory. We're a political party. We aren't a bunch of thugs, like they say. We're a political party. We got a program. We got a plan, you know. It was very impressive. So we decided to try to take a more organized approach to this. And we decided that after studying the works of Mao Zedong, that it was important for us to develop what he called a revolutionary base area. And that's what we thought of Ann Arbor as our revolutionary base area. We could organize, our people were there, we could organize them, we could put our ideas. So the greatest thing about this is you take over the local institutions and you put your ideas about the way it should be into effect, legal effect. So this is the plan we were following. And at the same time that I got out, in Ann Arbor, a bunch of left-wing students and disenchanted Democratic Party members formed a radical political party called the Human Rights Party. And they wanted to run people for office, for city council, and then we agreed to participate in this because we were an organized force in the community. We agreed to participate in this in the political tradition change for doing something about the marijuana laws, and the next election running for sheriff. We thought if we could win the sheriff's office, that all the horse shit would be over, and then you'd start arresting landlords for overcharging, stores for gouging. You know, we thought we could really do something with the sheriff, let alone not arrest any more of us for anything. So, in the first election, they ran two candidates. Well, they ran a full slate for the city council, but two candidates were elected from the Human Rights Party. And in a 7-person city council, they created quite a powerful effect because neither Republicans or Democrats could pass any legislation at all without one side or the other getting their support. Not a budget, not a street paving ordinance, you know, nothing. So they traded things and ended up with instituted. They said they couldn't legalize marijuana because of the state laws. So we developed the idea of a $5 fine. No arrest, decriminalization is what they call it now. This is in '72 though. And the idea was if you were harassed by the police for marijuana use, they could give you a ticket. You could pay a $5 fine, and then that was it. No criminal record. And then 2 other cities in college towns in Michigan adopted this law. So that was a golden period there. But we had one beautiful period in Michigan from March 9th to March 31st of '72 when there was no marijuana law. When my case was decided on March 9th and they declared it unconstitutional, and the new legislation that they passed was to be enacted on April 1st. So for 3 weeks, there was no marijuana law in Michigan. And we exploited that to the maximum. That was great. And then on April 1st, April Fool's Day in America, they passed put this new law back into effect where they could arrest you again. That's when we started the hash bash in Ann Arbor, which continues to this day, where we gathered on the campus of the University of Michigan to smoke weed openly and say fuck you to the new law. So we just had the 45th hash bash last April. So that was my early days.
Yeah.
In a nutshell, a big nut.
Yeah. Yeah. The hash bash is quite a big event.
Not a big commercial event.
Yeah, no, it's a big commercial. Well, there's some good in it too.
It's all good.
John has another career, many more, but
I'm what they call a polymath.
excuse me. The music side is so interesting, and the being a DJ in New Orleans for all those years, and your performances that you do now still to this day.
Basically, I started as a poet and a writer about music, and I've been doing that since the early 60s.
Could you talk a little bit maybe about Charles Olson for a second? Is that off course? And his influence? His influence on your, I mean, I know you're Olson's.
To me, I've taken in so much stuff, and some has been very influential in my writing, Charles Olson for sure. So it's all the same to me, Charles Olson, Bo Diddley.
Yeah.
Percy Mayfield, you know, Charlie Parker. Yeah.
5 years a DJ in New Orleans, and
I was a DJ for 12.
12. Okay.
Last 5 years, I hate to say this, but I was voted the favorite DJ of New Orleans for 5 years. My promise to cheat. They know what they want to hear.
And what did you play? I mean, is that basically what Radio Free Amsterdam is? It like is a compendium of what your shows were like in New Orleans, or it was New Orleans?
I have my own radio station on the internet called RadioFreeAmsterdam.com. And I make a program every week. But I've gathered together all the great disc jockeys I know who put on shows like, I don't know if they have them here, but in America, in all college towns, they have a campus radio station. And on the ones that are lucky, they have a guy who has a fantastic blues or jazz record collection. And every Sunday night he goes and gives them 3 hours of really good music. Well, I got about 10 guys like this, women and men, who make great programs. Most of them are on the air. And I make them send me the files of their shows, and then I edit them into 1-hour programs for my radio station. But this thing is my passion for the last 10 years. And everything that we make on our radio station is archived. So you can go, my radio station has a fantastic musical archive. You can spend a lifetime listening to these shows. And my guarantee is if you listen to my station for a year, your musical knowledge would increase so exponentially you wouldn't even believe it. Because we play really good music that they don't play anywhere else anymore. And so I'm trying to preserve not only the music, but also the presentation form of American radio in the 50s and 60s, when the best